Okay, hello, there we go. I feel like deja vu, like I've been here before.
You look familiar.
I do look familiar. Every time I look in the mirror in the morning, I go, that guy looks familiar. Actually, it's funny now that I look in the mirror and I see my dad every morning looking back. I'm like, hi, Dad. Okay, just in case you forgot, this is Porsche. Again, if you don't remember from this morning, maybe your short-term memory is as bad as mine is. My name is Rolf Kittlitz. I'm an after-sales training instructor. You've all heard that before. So again, welcome back. We're going to talk about in this session, Porsche special tools. Exactly the right tool for the job. When Manny asked me to give a presentation on this subject, like, wow, how do you narrow it down? Because we have, I can't even count how many different special tools. And some of them are so nuanced and so rare case use. How's that going to hit with the crowd? So I tried to do a nice collection of interesting special tools, mostly dealing with hand tool stuff. I mean, granted, we've got diagnostics, we've got pinout boxes, but I just felt like this crowd would enjoy more the metal stuff than the software stuff. Is that fair assessment? Okay. Exactly the right tool for the job. Just, and this is going to sound like I'm a broken record, just like I always encourage everybody to read their owner's manuals, the first thing I do when I talk to technicians in class is, what's the workshop manual say? Just like the engineers put countless hours into why did they mount that side marker reflector where they mounted it on that car, they put just as many hours into writing the workshop manual to develop procedures. Sometimes I have to take this off, to take this off, to take this off, to take this off. They've already figured that out. And while you're looking at it and you go, maybe I could do it a faster way, they've already figured out the faster way or the way that doesn't break something. And I'll tell you a funny story. I was teaching a chassis class several years ago, and there was one gentleman in my class, and by the way, he is no longer employed at a Porsche store. He now works for a different brand. Not that I would ever say anything bad about anybody, but first day of class, I've got a whole bunch of young guys and one experienced gentleman. You know, how long have you been working in cars? What's your experience level with Porsche? You know, what do you want to get out of this class? And I go down all 8 guys, and I get to the last guy, and they're like, well, I gotta be honest, man. I've been working on these cars for 20 years, and I'm required to come to class once a year, so I'm probably not going to learn anything, but I got to sit here. And I'm like, thanks for the honesty. Appreciate that. Way to go, right? So, little side note. My mentor years ago had a great expression. He goes, there are some guys who have 10 years of experience, and there are some guys who have 1 year of experience for 10 years. So back to Mr. I already know everything. All week long, we would talk about tires. We would talk about wheels. We would talk about brakes. We would talk about steering, about suspension, about alignment. And at least twice a day for every day of the class, I would go over a little bit of theory, and then right before we get up to go work on the car, he'd go, like he's going to share his wisdom with the young guys in class. He'd look down the desk and be like, well, guys, what I always do is blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, that's an interesting point. So I'd, on the big screen, workshop manual, and it basically says in bold blinking print, do not do verbatim what this guy just shared his wisdom. I felt like I was a game show host. Like, survey says, you know. So I'm always about what's the workshop manual say, and all the time, the inexperienced, the new techs, the way we write our workshop manual, the very, very first thing is a drop-down menu of tools. And 103 times out of 100, if I can get them to open the workshop manual, the first thing they do is they just scroll straight past the tool list, all the torque specs, all the warning notes to step 5. They don't even read step 1 to 4. They go straight to step 5, Now they got something in their hand and like, did I do it wrong? Yeah, we need to back up, read the warnings, find the tools. Anywho, that was a little bit of a side note, but exactly the right tool for the job. So, do I need my own? If I'm an enthusiast working on my own car at home, if I'm a track guy who swaps out my own stuff, do I need my own tools? Well, you definitely need hand tools. You definitely need a good quality torque wrench. You definitely need good wrenches and screwdrivers, but do I need to spend ridiculously large amounts of money on special tools? Maybe we can answer that question. First up, and I tried to take good photographs of it as well as have them here. How many people have watched tires get mounted and balanced? Okay. So the modern tire changing equipment, like what we have over there, the wheels pinch it as it rotates and it breaks the bead off the rim without damaging the wheel or the tire. But we have to keep the wheel safely located on the device. Most wheels, like this Cayenne, have multiple lug bolts. Sometimes they are a Centerlock wheel, and that tool over there is designed to fit into and locate a lug bolt for torque, and then it has a generic cone to fit a generic center cap cutout. This particular tool is designed just for Centerlock wheels, so it fits into the exact size, diameter, and taper of the Centerlock wheel with no damage, because this is actually plastic. It's a hard nylon. It's not metal. And that clamps it down so it keeps it stable on the mounting machine. We also reuse this on the center locks for the balancing machine because it's the right diameter fit over the spindle on the balancer. This is a Porsche special tool, and every Porsche center in the US was auto-ship these with the launch of 911 center locks in calendar year 2009. Similar, not for the mounting machine, but for the balancing machine, this is a metal cone, and it fits on the balancer only. Every Porsche, every is a dangerous word, isn't it? Let me choose my words carefully. Every 5x130 bolt pattern Porsche since mid-1973 uses hub-centric mounting, which means every one of those wheels has the exact same diameter, and it fits perfectly exactly halfway up this cone, takes all of the guesswork out of it. Most tire shops will have 20 or 30 cones, maybe not 20 or 30, 15 or 20 cones, and they'll, nope, that's not right, nope, that's not right, that's a little big, maybe that'll work, takes all the guesswork out of it. This fits almost every Porsche wheel made for the last 49 years. Every Porsche center has had this since the 90s, I think, maybe even older than that. This is a standardized tool, love it. Do you need this for yourself? How many of you own your own tire balancer? Okay. Do you have your own shop? Okay. You save money then if you're changing your own tires on your own tire balancer. You might look into this if you have a 5-bolt car. That might be something to keep in mind for you. But most people, that's going to be a Porsche-specific shop special tool. Both of those. Next one, how many of you have ever separated ball joints? Some people bang both sides with sledgehammers, makes a ton of noise. Some people use the old pickle fork, which does a great job relieving the rubber boot of its duties. Now these specifically, you see the logo, these are Volkswagen Group special tools, VAS numbers, and these are ball joint poppers. It's a big lever. It slides in there. We tighten this. It goes pop. It's easy. There's no noise from sledgehammers. There's no noise from air chisels. There's no noise and stuff flying and splintering from the pickle forks. Simple, easy, reliable, does not damage the ball joint boot if used correctly. You can still use it incorrectly if you want and damage ball joint boots, of course. It can be done. I've seen it happen. But we have multiple versions. I have 2 of them laying here. They have adjustable fulcrum points to fit in different applications. These are really, really nice tools to use. Again, as a home hobbyist, do I need these? How many times are you rebuilding your suspension in your own garage? If it's more than once a car life cycle, then maybe you would need these. But if you're not separating ball joints several times a year, don't know if it'd be worth buying it yourself. Now, we do not talk bad about anybody. This one is super slick. This is definitely one that you don't need, but I want you to know exists. This is a Porsche special tool. You know that because it has a 4-digit tool number and it has the Porsche triangular official part brand, right? Who can guess what it does? I mean, it's a piece of precisely machined steel.
Making gold bars?
Yes, that's exactly right. We melt down. We have finally figured out how to convert lead to gold. No. This is a go, no-go gauge for a tie rod end on that Cayenne. The tie rod end is built, maybe you want to call it an engineered weak point, an intended failure point. Of course, it would not be you that caused the traffic collision. You're driving through an intersection on a green light, somebody else blows a red light and T-bones you. You've now side-loaded the steering rack, and you may have damaged the actual gear mesh of the rack and the pinion. If this tool fits on the tie rod, there is no damage. If this tool does not fit, you need a steering rack. That's as clear and as cut and dry as possible. It is literally go or no go gauge. It's not about opinion. It's not about a, well, maybe it doesn't need one. Nope. It either fits or it doesn't. How much is a rack? Don't know, but after a collision, the other guy's buying it anyway. Then they even show us that from the bottom looking up, you put it in a specific spot so you can only see the second 2 digits of the part number. And the tiniest, I mean, pluck the eyelash off of a fly and slice it in half. The tiniest air gap should be there. And if it is bent, the tool will not go on, period. If that's the case, we have in our workshop manual in print for the insurance adjusters to read. We're not lying to you. We want you to replace the entire everything from tie rod to tie rod. And don't wreck cars. Don't blow red lights.
Does the tool say do not block?
You know, it's a good question because it would really, really suck if it was bent, wouldn't it? I'd be selling a lot of racks. Maybe I should. That's my favorite thing. We have similar inspections on all of our cars, and depending on the car, it might be up to the technician's discretion. It might be we break out a millimeter rule and take a measurement, but this is my favorite because it is unbelievably obvious. It either fits or it does not fit. Yes?
How does somebody know about those tools? Is it again, you have to look up on the website, the car was damaged, consider all these things, or what would help me to use that?
So every dealer technician has access to our workshop manual, and the very first thing we're going to tell you in the instructions, which is where I got this image, was assessment of steering gear after collision damage. This is the tool they specify for that car. Our Porsche approved collision centers have access to our workshop manual. They should have access to this tool as well.
Why don't they have any of those for like the 911?
Different engineer spec'd out the procedures on every car. The engineering team who writes the workshop manual for the Cayenne, the Carrera, the Taycan, there are different teams that design the cars and different teams that write the workshop manual. So we have a lot of repeat instructions, but we also have a whole lot of instructions that are specific only to not just Cayenne, but only that generation of Cayenne.
And you get enough need for that tool to make it worthy of having.
Since the question was, do we have enough need to produce the tool? Yes, Cayenne has historically been one of our best-selling cars ever.
And they're constantly wrecked.
By the other guys.
By the other guy, because it's a T-bone accident, right. So, I mean, it's just a numbers thing. If you have 1% of cars in the world that ever suffer a collision, and I bet it's more than 1%. If you make 100 cars, 1% of 100 is 1. If you make 100,000 cars, 1% of 100,000 is 1,000. So with more and more cars on the road, yeah, there's more opportunities to have oopsies. Next one, and I hope you enjoy my lovely hand model. I love these. Again, this is it's labeled a Volkswagen special tool. And it is an M14 by 1.5 thread. And how small is that brake caliper? Right, that's the 10 piston on the ceramic on the front of a Taycan. We use the same caliper on the front with the PCCB brakes. It's made of aluminum, but still, it's kind of weighty. Plus, I don't want to drop anything, damage anything, let the caliper swing by the brake soft line and damage that. Right, exactly, it would ruin my manicure. So we unbolt one bolt, slide the first pin in, tighten it down, unbolt the second bolt, slide the second pin in, tighten it down. And just slide the caliper out so we can go inside the caliper and do a pad change. Love these tools. Love, 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 love. Again, these are M14. Not every car uses these. We went through the prototype process on the M12 version to fit other cars, and they'll be available soon. And they will also be auto shipped to every Porsche center in the US. But every Porsche center has these to avoid damaging very expensive ceramic brakes. And make the pad change easier.
That's a tool we can use.
Yes, that's a tool you could use if you have this correct thread size. If you have a 911 and you try this, you'll spin for 800 years. It's never going to catch a thread because it's 2 millimeters too big. So wait until the sports car version comes out and then buy it in a year or so. Love that tool. Here's another one that you may or may not need. If you have a vehicle with Centerlock wheels, you need a great big lever because it's 600 Newton meters or 444 pound-feet, whichever comes first. The thing I love about this brand of torque wrench, these are from Stahlwille, they are not a micrometer style wrench where as you wind it up, you're compressing a spring. Everybody knows, always wind down your micrometer wrench so you don't leave the spring compressed. You don't want to permanently weaken the spring. The way that this type wrench works, it's still a click type wrench. I have a smaller version of it right here. When I move my adjuster, I'm not compressing a spring. I am simply, imagine a seesaw. If my fulcrum is in the middle, I have equal leverage on both sides. If my fulcrum is over here, I have very asymmetrical leverage. And if my fulcrum is over here, again, it's asymmetrical, just the other direction. When we adjust that wrench, we move the fulcrum, not the spring. So the spring is never under tension. That wrench has been set to 600 Newton meters for the 6 years that we've owned it. That's where we leave it because we can. What else is great about it is in the direction of the hand grip, it's a torque wrench. In the opposite direction, it's a breaker bar. So I now have two tools with one price tag. And it was quite a price tag. Trust me, you might consider buying a separate breaker bar. But it's awesome because it also comes with a ratcheting head because on our Centerlock wheels, it's a 3-step tightening process. We tighten correctly to 600 Newton meters, then loosen 90 degrees, and then tighten to 600 Newton meters a second time. having a flipping head there really speeds up the process. Instead of tighten to 600 Newton meters, take the socket off, mount it to the breaker bar, loosen it 90 degrees, take the socket off, put it back on the torque wrench, tighten it to 90 degrees again, and repeat for the other three tires. I can't count today. That's a fantastic tool. It is very expensive. The tool, the torque wrench without the replaceable head is probably, don't quote me on this, I'm guessing going to be in the neighborhood of $1,200. Plus the reversible head, plus the extension. It's only money, you can't take it with you. But again, if I'm a shop that's doing multiple wheel exchanges all the time, that's the right tool for the job. I know that there are some guys who track their GT3s and they're only going to swap the tires every so often. You still need to use a big enough torque wrench, and you want it to be nice and long because leverage is king, right? But no power tools, please. These are the early and the late 911 Centerlock sockets. I specify 911 because, well, a vintage 917 has one style Centerlock. A 991 RSR has a different style Centerlock. A 918 has a different style Centerlock. A Carrera GT has a different style Centerlock. And different to all of those is the 911 version. And we have the early, came out with 2010 997. And we have the late version that came out with 991 2014 Centerlocks. Always use the correct generation wrench for the socket for the vehicle, of course. Oh, and then this one. This is one everybody who has a car with a Centerlock wheel has this. It's over there on the bench right now because I've got the Manti car part. That's the little thing to stick behind the center cap to correctly remove it without peeling up the metal cover and tacoing it, because that's bad, or pull and have it go fing across the shop and bounce and land in the pile of dirt, right? Scratch it up. That's the correct tool. They're very reasonably priced. If you have a car with a Centerlock in it, you already own that tool and the appropriate socket. It actually stores inside the 3/4 inch square drive of the socket. This is a relatively new one. This fits 971 Panamera and Taycan. This is a center cap puller. We have taken away the holes. Historically, for years and years and years and years and years, we had a double prong hook you would fit into the center cap holes. We hide the holes in the black stripes of the German flag, and you would pull the center cap out. Well, that lets water in, iron hubs, aluminum wheels, salty northeast, you know what I'm talking about. So we no longer have holes. If you really, really scrutinize the center caps on the Taycan on the lift, there are no holes to put the tool in. We still have to be able to get the center caps out. So this tool was created, and we take butyl rubber cord and we build up I don't have a picture of the business end of it, so you just have to take my word for it. Probably time to replace this. It's getting tired. And the butyl rubber we press on, and then we just go, comes straight off. It's beautiful. I know a few people are like, well, why did we make a tool for that? We could just get a valve lapper and like, okay, keep doing that. I bet you eventually the horse is going to be very proud of the rest of the crest. I mean, they wouldn't have made the tool if there was no reason for the tool. What's that?
That does not come with the car.
That does not come with a car. That is a workshop tool, but here's the cool thing. I'm not telling you you can't buy these tools. I'm just trying to point you in the right direction of what's worth your time and money and what's not. You're welcome to buy that if you own a car that needs that tool. Probably, though, you don't need to pop off your center caps like we do in the shop. Probably if you're doing like a winter wheel swap, you're just unbolting the entire wheel and then you can poke the center cap out of the back so you don't need it. So then why do we have it? Glad you asked. That'll come up in a couple of slides. This one is one of my favorite tools. I learned this tool in the heat of battle. I was still working as a technician in Houston, and I was working on an early Cayenne, and it needed a wheel bearing. Now, if you've ever seen many modern day cars, what's the steering knuckle look like these days? Very long, very tall S-bend. Gone are the days where the upper and lower ball joint were both inside the 14-inch wheel diameter of a, let's say, a 60s or 70s American car. Now the upper ball joint for improved, who was here last year when I talked about scrub radius and SAI? So it's to make SAI vertical as possible without ruining the scrub radius. We now mount the upper ball joint above the upper contact patch. But that long S-bend means when you take the wheel knuckle off the car, you walk over the press, it doesn't lay flat. So you'll stack up a few wheel bearing carcasses, a couple of cheap sockets, and you end up with this wobbly stack that looks like an illustration in a Dr. Seuss book, and you put pressure on it and the stack scatters, you take one to the gut, you go get a new spleen, you go back to it. It's not fun. This set is designed to do the wheel bearing change on many Porsche models, and it's fantastic to use. I first used it because I follow my own advice. What was this? This was in 2005. First time I'm doing a wheel bearing on a Cayenne, I went and I got the directions, and the first thing I looked at is go get tool number T10205. So I went and I got it, and then it tells me in the directions how to do it, and it was the easiest wheel bearing I've ever done in my life. Love this tool. Do you guys need it as an enthusiast? Probably not, because it's prohibitively expensive, and how many wheel bearings are you ever going to do in your entire life versus a working shop? But it is a really awesome tool. By now, you're probably going, why are we even seeing this presentation? Well, part of what Manny and I were talking about was there's a reason the labor rate is what it is at your Porsche center. They own all these tools because we bill them, sorry, we don't bill them. We draft their bank account first and then send them the tool when it's ready. They are, we call these auto ship tools. It's at the Porsche center because it's the right tool for the job for every car that we make. We have, every time we launch a new car, we have a launch of new tools that fit just that car. It's going there. All the technicians that come to class, we're teaching them how to use these tools. It's the fastest, the safest, and the most efficient way to fix the car. That's why we're going over this today.
So the one tool that I'm sure everybody here is interested in, which we haven't talked about, PIWIS.
PVIS tester. Yep.
And it's competitors, CarSoft, all that stuff. I mean,
Don't know about those because I work in the OE world.
okay. So anything, it's what, several $100s, $300?
Oh, it's several $1,000s. The question is, if I wanted to purchase my own PVIS tester, can I? Yes, you can. An independent repair facility is welcome to purchase our tester. They also can subscribe to the software to keep it running the second month. And our workshop manual. And they can even call our tech line. Because they have paid the subscription fee, they get access to call tech line to help diagnose a problem car. Now, of course, all of our Porsche centers fixing new in-car warranty cars, or in warranty cars, they're at the top of the list. They'll eventually get to that guy's question, but that's allowed. There's only one difference between the PVIS tester you find in a Porsche center versus an independent repair facility is key programming. For security reasons, only Porsche centers are allowed to program keys. But other than that, yeah, if you wanted to pony up the money, you could buy one of those tomorrow. Well, just like my first presentation, know where to get your information, right? Don't listen to the snake oil. So, love that tool. I first used it in the heat of battle worked perfectly, fell in love with it. I love that tool so much, I wrote that into my basic chassis class because I want the technicians to know, because they've all just, I don't need directions, it's just a wheel bearing. You press it out on the press like you do every press. No, this is faster, safer, easier. It's truly a joy to use. Now, I pointed out earlier, usually we hide that table in the closet to get a little bit more floor space, but because we're talking about special tools, I left it out on purpose because we have 3 different spring compressors. All 3 of them are genuine factory tools. They're manufactured for us by a company called Klon. They build very, very good. You can see how thick it is. It's steel. It weighs a lot. Do you remember that early 90s documentary movie about the amusement park full of dinosaurs? You know the one. Great documentary. There's the one scene where the little kid is in the back of the SUV playing with the night vision goggles, and the lawyer says to him, "Are those heavy?" "Yeah." "Well, then they're expensive. Put it away." That's my view on suspension tools. Is it heavy? Yeah. Then I can trust my life to it. These are fantastic because you can't see in this picture, but you're welcome to go over and look at them next time you stand up. The way these yokes capture the spring, there's no bending of the spring when it's compressed. There's no slipping of the spring when it's compressed. It is safe, it's reliable, and the thread pitch on this, I can almost turn the hex with my fingers and it compresses the spring, and I can change out a damper. Usually when I demo this in class, I purposely put the socket on a speed handle because that's all the torque you need. That's how smooth that one works. It is fantastic to use. If you're doing a lot of suspension work, that's a fantastic spring compressor, and it comes with a large, a medium, and a small diameter yoke pair, so you can set it up on a straight spring, a beehive spring, a tapered spring. It's got a lot of variety. This tool we auto shipped to every Porsche center with the launch of 97 Boxster. And it fits all 996 and all 997 conventional cars, not GT cars, because they use beehive springs on the McPherson struts. Well, we have a later version, starting with 991, we have straight cylindrical springs and a smaller diameter. We have an updated tool. Again, the yokes engage the spring winding very securely, and it's got this bright yellow plastic so we don't scratch the coating on the spring, which is very important. And again, it's a joy to use, and speed handle is all the torque you need. It's fantastic. But wait, there's more. There's a giant spring compressor. You'll notice it's mounted to the end of the bench. We first mounted it to the side of the bench, and the bench fell over. Is it heavy? Yes. Then I can trust my life to it. This is a 2015 Macan S front, not McPherson strut, but front spring strut assembly. You'll notice the mast of the tool is incredibly tall. There's a reason. How far forward is the engine in a Macan chassis? It's in front of the car in front of you in traffic, right? And a V6 bi-turbo is going to weigh a good bit. So you've got this cantilever effect. This coil spring is holding up the weight of the engine plus the cantilever effect on it. We actually use the entire mast before the spring is safe to handle. Unloaded, that spring looks like it used to hold up a 59 Eldorado. It is absolutely mind-boggling how tall that spring is when it's straight out of the box. So we auto-shipped that tool to every Porsche store in 2014 for the launch of the 2015 Macan. And we can use it on a variety of cars since then too, but that's how long it's been at your Porsche stores. Yep. And it is, oh, nice thick plate steel. It's beautiful. Yes, sir.
The coating on the springs to prevent
Correct.
And if the spring starts to corrode like a traditional car, how damaging is that to the spring?
So the question was, the coating on the spring is there to prevent corrosion. The answer is yes. And if that coating is damaged, how bad is it for a spring? Well, living in the Deep South for 20 years, I didn't know the coil springs broke. But moving to the Northeast, coil springs break. So if it is a spring compressor that's using just sharp edge metal, scratching the coating, once you get into the base material, corrosion starts in, and a spring steel that's being constantly cycled, yeah, bad things can happen. Same thing for CV joint axles, right? You should pay a lot of attention to not scratch the paint on the CV axle because it is a torsion spring. You don't think of it, I mean, it's only that long. You don't think of it as a torsion bar, but it is especially every time you accelerate, you're loading one end versus the other in opposite directions, and scratches in that paint lead to broken CV axles. One of our warehouse employees a few years ago had an older car, and he was stuck at the parking lot exit waiting for a tow truck. I'm like, what happened? He goes, my CV axle broke. I'm like, okay, that's what happens. It wasn't a high horsepower car. It was just a high mileage older car that maybe didn't get the best love and care when it got worked on. Probably got blemishes in the paint on the axle. Led to a broken axle. Now, here, yes sir?
Who makes the tools? Does Porsche make them, or do they hire someone? How do they get the specs?
So the question is, who makes our tools? We work with a number of tool suppliers. Stahlvilla, Klon, Gadore, Wera, several of the German tool several of the German tool companies that, you know, if you lived in Germany, you just go down to the local hardware store and you buy a Hazette socket. We can't do that here. We go to the local hardware store, we buy Craftsman maybe. But those are the companies that we use to make these special tools for us. Sometimes it's simple as like that. That's just a Klon spring compressor, and we ordered it with the correct diameter yokes. They make those yokes, I want to tell you, in like a dozen different sizes. We picked the 3 sizes that the dealers are going to need, and we auto ship what the dealers need, but it's an off-the-shelf Klon spring compressor versus something like that is custom made, not just for Porsche, but only for that one model Porsche. Okay, now we're getting into the fun stuff. Remember I said I would need to pull the center cap off, but you probably wouldn't? That's for that. Anybody want to take a guess what it is? Hint, it goes in the center cap hole.
Alignment?
It's for alignments. So rather than putting the crab legs onto the tire or the bear claws into the gap between the tire and the wheel, what we do is we pop the center cap out, and we have the 5x130 dimension and the 5x112 dimension that fits perfectly where the center cap was, guaranteed not to scratch the paint on the face of the wheel, and it fits absolutely perfectly to the theoretical disc of the wheel that when we then hang the alignment rack flags on. That one we auto shipped to every store, again with the launch of Macan, because it fits both diameters of center cap we use on our 5-bolt cars. Oh, it's awesome to use. And for the technician, it's a faster setup and a more, we'll say, idiot-resistant setup, because nothing is idiot-proof, right? We'll say it's an idiot-resistant setup for the technician to get a nice, accurate alignment and no scratches on the wheels. People care about that stuff, right? I know I do.
Is it only sold to Porsche people, or do independents, can they buy it?
Again, we like money. Every tool I'm showing you, you're allowed to purchase. It only takes money, and you can't take it with you. So buy two, they're small. We like money.
Carrying cases included?
Yeah, oh yeah, fancy carrying case, pre-cut foam, what could be better, right? So that's the 5-bolt version. We also, for our center, yes sir? Yeah, you can go to your local Porsche center, and any of the Porsche special tools are available for public purchase.
10% off today? I'm close at 3.
So that's our 5-bolt version. We also offer a similar version for the center bolt wheels. The safety inside the center bolt wheel has an M8 thread that these, depending on whether the wheel requires the spacer or not, we use either the short or the long M8 bolts through the center of the adapter and tighten it down into the Centerlock wheel. And again, perfect alignment, no scratches. I had a hand up earlier over here. Yes? Yeah. That 992, this was from several years ago. We still had our red rack here, not the new black one. Several years ago, when we launched the 992 for our new model intro class, we got 4 cars in the building. Dave Becker, who used to be the instructor here, he and I, we took it to fill it with fuel, took it to the car wash, put that car on the lift where the Taycan is right now, and we pulled the engine out of it so we could talk about all the new technology with the technicians. And a month and a half later, we put the engine back in. On a 992, that means you're removing part of the rear subframe, and now your alignment is gone. So part of putting the car back together is aligning the car, and those are these scales, the conventional scales. I put it on there just to see, and you know, the car needed an alignment, but it was, here's the neat thing, our garden variety 911, let's say, a Carrera S, a GTS, our specification is 20 kilograms maximum left to right per axle. Per axle, left to right. And then our GT cars, the factory spec is 5 kilograms left to right. So much, much tighter. I put the car on the lift. It needed an alignment because we'd had the chassis apart, and it was sitting at like 6 and 7 kilos. And I tightened I adjusted one eccentric. It brought the entire alignment perfect. And then it was down to 3 kilos on one axle and 2 kilos on the other. It's not bad out of a regular car to be inside of GT specs. So I'm pretty proud of that. But yeah, that's the Centerlock version for the same thing, to hang it on the alignment rack. Now, who knows what those are? These are pure unobtainium, and they are on intergalactic back order. You can't buy these today. Who was here right before COVID when I did the presentation on rear axle elasto-kinematic toe adjustments? It was very fascinating, I promise you. I probably made a big deal about how that stuff is there to help the car handle better and all this stuff because of the various radiuses of the arms as they move through space, and the bushings. One is purposely rigid, one is purposely soft. Now, the very, very first version of that was the 993 multi-link rear axle, and these are 993 only tools. It only fits a 4 model year spread of one car we made before sales took off. You know, we made more 996s the first year than we made 993s.
Wow.
Right? These are curved spirit levels with gradients on them, and there's, if you look, that bubble is sitting right there between 18 and 21, and that bubble is sitting right there almost exactly on 0. And of course, the one tool, these actually click onto the suspension arms in the rear axle. The Hunter alignment machine can't read the kinematic toe because what these are measuring is the parallelness or out of parallel, how close the two arms are. Specifically, on that multi-link rear axle, I mean, everybody thinks of a caster angle as a front angle because we steer and we have caster. But there's caster built into this self-steering effect of the kinematic principle. I can't directly adjust caster on most cars. It's usually just something that is there and you may not be aware of it, you may be aware of it, but you can't directly adjust it. When I do an alignment on a 993, I'm twisting a third eccentric on the rear axle, and it is adjusting the parallelness of these two arms by adjusting the caster of the rear spindle. The top arm pushes the top of the rear spindle forward and back, and that alters the parallelness of these two lower control arms. If I don't have these tools, I do not align a 993. Ever. Because the only way to know is with the factory tools. Most cars, the first thing you adjust is rear camber, and then you do rear toe, and then you move to the front axle. The 993 is a really oddball car because the first thing you adjust is rear toe, and then rear camber, and then rear kinematic toe with these tools. And our directions even say, to make rear kinematic toe correct, sacrifice camber so that kinematic toe is correct. Lowered 993s, while they look cool, they drive like a bucket of bricks because this is thrown out. In fact, every lowered 993 I've ever touched, the kinematic toe works opposite of the way it was engineered, and it improves its oversteer. It does not need help oversteering. It's a 911.
Do you have to go to a classic Porsche dealership for this, or?
So the question was, do you have to go to a classic Porsche store for this tool? Any Porsche store that's been in business since the 993 was around probably still has theirs. If they were smart, they bought a second one before they went out of production. Today, if I'm going to open a new classic store, I'm not exactly sure how we would get those tools to them. If I broke ground and launched a new store today, I don't know. I genuinely don't know that answer. Both stores that I worked at had them because they were open in the 90s.
Along those lines, do you guys ever share tools or no?
Do we, the training center, share tools
Yeah, like
with...
the example you just said. If somebody called and said, I got a 993 in here, you got the unobtainium tool.
So
Could I borrow it?
we as the training center don't share tools, but we do have a tool rental program for our Porsche centers in Atlanta because they have several sets of this, among other special tools like Carrera GT tools that maybe the store didn't buy the full package. They only bought the baby package, and then they come in and they, oh, time to do a clutch job. Well, I need the full package. So yeah, we do have a tool rental program based out of Atlanta. We also have exchange control modules too. Like for classic cars, before I condemn a 964 DME, the Porsche Center could rent a DME from Atlanta, plug it in, verify it before you pull the trigger on that expensive control unit.
So are you saying that's not a good idea to buy a 993?
No, 993 is a fantastic car. I'm saying don't let Skippy align a 993. Don't go for the 1995 special. You want to spend a little bit more than $20 on a 993 alignment. That's what I'm saying.
Was that suspension similar to the 928?
Was the 993 rear suspension similar to a 928? In concept, yes, because we're trying to bring toe in under load. In hard parts, nothing at all like it. While we're on that subject, so the 993 was our first car with 5-link rear suspension and all this adjustability. Every car we've built since then with 5-link, we've taken away the need to adjust it, so it's just baked into the car, so to say. Like that Cayenne has 5-link rear suspension, Still does all the same tricks the 993 did. I just can't directly adjust its kinematic toe. Now, my #1 favorite Porsche special tool ever. In the history of ever. This funny thing that looks like a question mark. Anybody want to guess? Well, it's Rolf's favorite special tool. He just told us. Well, it is for torquing, yes. I like to say that every fastener gets torqued. Some even get torqued correctly. Some are under torqued, some are over torqued, some are torqued correctly. So it's cool that we have so many tools that snap into this. Here's another thing I love about these German torque wrenches is this dimension here is standardized. And I can snap in a variety of tools. I love that one because it goes around a corner. This is a Boxster and 996, 997 rear axle because you have to get to an eccentric nut located here. When I was working in Charlotte, we got a phone call. Guy wants to get his 996 GT3 aligned on a Friday afternoon, and it's Friday morning. Like, we can't fit you in until next week. But I got a track session this weekend, and I just lowered my car. Sorry, we can't fit you in until next week. A few hours goes by, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, parts department gets a phone call from the local alignment shop. Do you guys keep eccentric bolts in stock for the back axle of a 996 GT3? No? Why? Because we broke both of them. Because we have the tool to correctly torque that and not over torque it. So I aligned this car on Tuesday like I said I would. With brand new eccentric bolts, exactly. This tool, the front axle of a sports car has big brake ducts. You can't see the tie rod jam nuts. You just can't see them. This tool fits 2005 to today sports cars. There's a picture of my lovely hand model using it. It is bent to clear the alignment rack and go through the hole in the brake duct and land exactly on the jam nut of the tie rod. This is my favorite tool we've ever made in the history of ever. I love this tool. Love, 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 love. Isn't that fantastic?
I remember reading a long time ago that torque wrenches had to be straight. We didn't get the correct reading.
So, I actually, when we were closed for COVID, I did a video, because we still had to train, on torque wrench use and myths. You haven't seen my myth video. But, since you brought it up, it's not because it becomes a piece of flex that I'm worried about, because I'm using resistance-based torque. I'm so many Newton meters or pound-feet of resistance. Angle, it would matter the fact that it's a spring. What does matter is I've now drastically increased the length. So reading the workshop manual, it tells us the raw torque value is 50 Newton meters, but when you put on this tool, readjust your torque wrench to 32.5 Newton meters, the engineers did the math for me. All I have to do is follow my directions. There's that recurring theme again. Read the manual. What is it, RTFM? That's read the fascinating manual. Fascinating. I'm sure that's what that is. So, do I need my own? Here's my recommendations for you. If you own a 5x130 car, or a 4x130 car, or a 5x112 car, own a pair of wheel pins, not a single. I never use less than 2 on a hub. One time, I was working in Charlotte on a Carrera, front axle, no drag on the hub because it's a 2-wheel drive car. And I had my one wheel pin I thought was a perfect 12 o'clock. It was really 12:15. And as I pulled the wheel off the hub centric mount, the weight rotated the hub, and I chipped the bright red paint off the front driver's side caliper. He'll never notice. 4 times a day, every day. Our service department had to buy a caliper, because how do you fix that? He didn't bring it in with, by the way, the chip was the size of my thumbnail. There was no hiding this. Every time I do wheels since then, I always use 2 wheel pins. That way, the wheel won't rotate on me.
I heard ceramic requires to.
Right? And the way I say it, so in our directions we say if you have ceramic brakes, you must use 2 wheel pins. I just do every wheel like that because I don't want to chip the paint off a caliper. The other thing is if you own an older car with the alloy lug nuts, Porsche special tool P300 is an alloy lug socket, extra deep, so you get a full bite on the extra deep alloy acorn nut. Hand tools only for many, many reasons. The Thunder Gun will ruin the socket as well as friction weld the lugs to the wheels, and you don't want to go there.
That's a special tool?
P300 is a special tool that's available for purchase. That's what I would recommend. These are the ones that I recommend if you're winter wheel tire swaps, track wheel tire swaps. If you have a 5-bolt car or 4-bolt car, you want those 2 wheel pins. And if you have a 19 millimeter across the flat acorn nut, like a G Model 911, the black anodized one, you want to use the extra deep aluminum socket. I don't recommend that for a modern car because it's a shorter hex, and you'll only bite and you'll end up rounding out the front half of the socket because it's soft aluminum to not damage the anodizing. So don't crisscross that stuff. If you have a Centerlock wheel, again, it came with the correct tool for the generation of the Centerlock wheel. Of course, always use that tool, always with the hand tools. And there you go.